Well, my heart would always go to the roaring kitty character, no matter what. And I don't mean just because I'm acting that part. I mean, that's where I would be. That's the voice that I want to hear. And that's the story component of this that would speak to me. So yes, we can say it's sort of a David versus Goliath thing, but it also really became that. Like when Kitty started making these videos, I don't think he was trying to start a movement necessarily. I think he was a guy in a pandemic who was like giving himself a lifeline. I actually think there was a lot of joy in these videos he made. That's one of the things I saw that made me want a piece of him, was like this. He has this like spirit. He has a spirit and a passion, and he's like, this is me, like, this is who I am. I'm wearing a cat shirt and a bandana. And if you want to listen to me talk about investments for like 3 hours, great. And if not, like, cool. Like, he's just so, there was something so refreshing about that. And I think that's why people responded to him. And especially we're talking about like a business world that probably has a lot of smoke and mirrors around it. And this is a guy who was all about transparency. He was posting his spreadsheet, his balance sheet, and even his personality. It felt very honest to me. And so I see why people sort of got behind him and why he was the voice, or the mascot of the Davids. That said, I don't think he meant to be a leader of a movement. I think he was. I don't know that if I would. I don't know that it was more innocent than that, but this is also like millions of people, millions took his energy and passed it around online, and it ended up spreading like wildfire. It's really, there's some alchemy that happened in this story, in this moment of time, where if it was 6 months later, I don't know if it would have happened in the same way. It seems really like something magical happened for a moment. And I think that this story in this moment for a lot of people is like a real moment in their life, like a little story in their own life, the way that, because I'm not on social media. So as soon as I started exploring that part of this, where I saw how many videos, how many memes, how many posts, the lexicon around it, it was not just a David. It was like an army, of retail, people who became retail traders, which, the big firms really treated more like chum for sharks, right? And now I believe all those big firms have had to hire people to keep track of the retail traders and what's happening online, because they wielded their power. I did not meet Keith, and when Keith was subpoenaed by Congress, and after and around that time, I believe he sort of, went off the grid, so to speak, and he's remained that way. This is also like a very recent event. Still parts of it, might still be a little story left to finish, so to speak. It just didn't feel that my gut was like, I don't need to like impinge on his privacy. It's pretty clear he stepped away for a reason. I sort of felt like he was like a samurai who took off his bandana and walked off into the distance and has not been seen, is sort of like the feeling I got. I spent a lot of time with Roaring Kitty, his YouTube channel, which I loved. And that was frankly the thing that really got me. The second I saw a video of him, I was like, oh yeah, like I want to spend time with this person. I could use a piece of that, and whatever the kitty is in me, that would be great for that to come out. So and of course there was a book that's based on the Antisocial Network, right? And a whole lot of coverage and research to be done. As an actor, it's frankly easier to learn enough to know what you're saying rather than act like you know what you're saying, if that makes sense, right? So So I had to learn just enough around it that I believed myself, right? So, you know, there's stuff to do with the stock market, there's stuff to do with um, the internet and the culture there. And but you know, he has investment videos. He teaches you how he invests, and so I started there, and then went from there. Honestly, I'd want to make sure he's okay. You know, yeah, really, because it's actually pretty heavy to like get subpoenaed by Congress, and you know, you're up against guys who have big wallets and who have a lot of counsel and who have a lot of fancy friends, right? And this is a guy who came from, you know, working class kind of neighborhood in Brockton, Massachusetts, and doesn't have that. So I would, you know, I would ask him how he's doing. Yeah. He was really brave, and even in the testimony, he's real. Like he's like, you see the difference between these other guys and him, and that's why people responded to him, because he was being straight. You know, he's like, you see the way that the others are skipping around answers. You know, they're politicians. Like he was being totally real, even in the testimony. I felt Craig was great. I mean, we'd known each other just a little bit. I mean, and so I was happy to hear from him, and I was happy to be thought of for this part by him too. And Craig's, I believe, I mean, he should be the one to say this, but I think his son was like super into the GameStop experience and made a little money, then lost a little money. And so I think he kind of lived it in his house. Yeah, super collaborative. The movie came together kind of quick, and obviously the story happened pretty recently. So it's and so him and our writers did a great job of getting the script to where it was, and then he just put together a great ensemble too. Like there's so many wonderful people, and I only get to work with really a few of them, frankly, but you know, just so great to be in everybody's company. And everybody said, you know, Craig is he's, I mean, he's easy. Like he's fast, he knows what he wants, and he's always excited by it. Like he's always wanted to show me stuff on his phone. Like, do you want to see, you know? And I'm like, no, don't show me yesterday's dailies. Don't show me the cut, you know. And he wants it cut quickly, so because he feeds off the energy of it. And yeah, we had a good time. Pete, I mean, I haven't laughed that much in a long time. I really, you know, it really felt like being in the car with your friends in high school, like making something out of nothing. You know, like you're on a film set, you're sometimes sitting around waiting for the lights to be set up, and he just had me, you know, laughing. And even on camera too, you know, and the stuff that would come out of his mouth, the improvisations, a lot of stuff I can't say here. It was really something. And we had a really good time. I think we were sort of like an unlikely duo that ended up getting along really well. And I like that relationship in the film. Shailene Woodley, who plays my wife in the film, she's so real. Like she's so effortless as an actor and easy to work with. And that is one of the kind of, I think, charms for me of our storyline, at least in the film, is how sort of humble it is in another way. Like they're in their kitchen, you know, he's in his basement making videos. He's like driving in a car with his brother, where like, you know, the billionaire side of the storyline is got a different vibration. But so it felt nice to be with a couple actors who you could really just kind of trust and be yourself with and have fun with. And hopefully, like, yeah, create the right dynamics for the family. I certainly don't know what I would do without my support system. So, you know, and that's part of the joy of life, whether it's your partner or a friend, like, is to share something, right? You're like sharing a secret. So like your videos start to get watched, and that feels really great, but it's even nicer when you can say to, you know, your Caroline, Shailene, like, isn't this crazy? You know, that's what we're doing. That's what we're doing online too. You know, we're saying, isn't this crazy? You know, you want to share. This story goes somewhere where that Keith never could have predicted. I really don't think he thought that it was what happened was going to happen. Well, I think people should see it in the theater because I think they're going to have a really good time. I think they're going to have a really good time. I think they're going to laugh. I think it's meant to be shared. And I think that if people go, I think they will have a good time. Like, I feel confident that if you put your butt in a seat, you will enjoy the film. And I think weirdly it's about that. There's like a lot about community actually, and just our you know, geography is like moved online. But I do think we need to like bring it back to the tangible world as well. Our community and our geography, and have both. But mostly I know that I laugh harder if I'm around other people, and I also will be moved more because you feel, you know, the experience and the hearts beating next to you somehow. I'd say Dumb Money is the story of a guy who believed in a stock and put his voice out online, and an army formed around him, and they tried to take down Wall Street. It's a David versus Goliath story about, you know, a little engine that could. No, you definitely don't have to know about Wall Street to enjoy the film. I didn't know that much about Wall Street, and I enjoyed the story a lot. And I also think that's actually kind of like, is that who it's for, right? Like, I mean, it's about retail traders, which for those, I didn't know what that meant either before. It's for people who aren't on Wall Street. That's actually what the story is. So I think that's who it's for. And I think everybody can get behind that sort of underdog, you know, coming up against the man vibration.
It's ironic that I'm doing this film because I have taken classes on investments. I have listened to friends for hours about investing. I have watched now probably 30 hours of YouTube. That's a lie. Maybe like 10 hours of YouTube videos about short squeezes and different types of phrasing when it comes to investments and money and trading. And I still don't understand it at all. Like, my brain was not built for mathematics or this world whatsoever. But I do, you know, Wall Street Bets is like a forum where people can go in and kind of explain where and what they're doing compared to like the powers that be. What I like about the story is that although, like, when you're first reading it, the protagonists do seem to be kind of like the guys on the ground, the dumb money guys. But you also kind of understand, and there is like you do feel the human in characters like Gabe Botkin and some of the guys on the other side. And I think it's important when you tell stories like this to understand both sides of the equation and not tell the audience what they should believe or what's right or what's wrong, but just offer up some of the information and let people kind of sit with it how they choose. For me, you know, anytime there's a discrepancy between kind of the big guys and the little guys, I love those stories because I think that most of, you know, America doesn't function as a proper democracy, and we talk about it, but you don't always get to see stories like this in, you know, in mainstream media as much as we want or as much as maybe we need. And not to use words like oligarchy, but, you know, like it's beautiful to me to find stories where you see people who kind of rise up together. And what I love about it is it's not like an activist movement. You know, this story isn't talking about a bunch of activists on the ground who are trying to change anything. They're just people on the ground who kind of outsmarted a system and then got a little bit fucked over because they were so intelligent and because they knew what they were doing. And I think that that's an interesting and important story to highlight. As far as like research goes, a lot of it was me just, you know, watching Keith and online, and also again watching YouTube videos about what the fuck a short squeeze was, and what, like, trying to understand like gamma whatever it is, and there's so many words in this script that just are so beyond me, and I like to think of myself as a smart person, but I just don't understand this world whatsoever. So it was inspiring to me to learn about it, and also, enlightening to be like, if I'm somebody who has access to a lot of things, and has had a great education and has the means to resource externally and to understand things, and I still don't get it, like, movies like this are a little bit important.
It seems like a lot when you see that list of characters, but they're all such brilliant actors. And it was critical that they all had their moments. It's like they do get 3 or 4 scenes each, so those scenes had to work hard and really show us the backstory and give us this emotional weight as well as humor and likability. I think the one thing that ties it all together is the stakes, and it's like to have that tracking, and they track it so beautifully with their performances. But the stakes are tying them all together, so you almost want to check in on each of them in these pivotal moments with what's happening in the market. It is life-changing events for particularly our Reddit users. It's like whether they win or lose, it's going to dramatically change their life. I always like to keep it engaging and have an energy to it, and it's like that part of that is the dance of the humor and the drama to keep it driving. I also, which is pretty exhilarating, we had this wealth of memes from online that are all actual memes that are in the film. I knew there would be an energy to it. It's like, but I also, very deliberately, you see at the beginning of the film, we kind of hit you in the face with the energy, and then we slam the brakes on it and be like, okay, we're now going to tell you a story, and get to know these characters. So we get to know Paul and Shailene quite a bit, as we ease into it. And then it's almost like this snowball effect, which is reminiscent of what was happening with the GameStop journey. It just starts picking up steam and getting faster and more intense and more intense. And so we're bouncing back and forth like crazy. Multiple characters as opposed to a single character. Obviously, it is all like surrounding Keith Gill and his journey. They're all rallying around that, but there's an enormous amount of characters involved in this. We're also bringing in, actual footage from outside with the TV anchors, the TV hosts. We have a wealth of information we can use there. But I approached it visually in a different way. It's like, in the past, we've moved the camera a lot. We've had a lot of tracks musically that help that along. In this case, it's a lot of people in front of laptops, a lot of people on phones. And we very deliberately decided to keep the camera locked off and create the energy and the pace in the edit. So it meant a lot of coverage, a lot of different angles, and also a score that could help move that. So that was really fun to work in a different way on this. When this was happening, it was in the thick of COVID. And at the time, my younger son, who was 24, was living with us, which is very common. Everybody was sort of, shutting down. And, it was a very intense period. He was involved in Wall Street Bets. He was going through this whole journey from early on all the way through. And so in that ride, that rapid ascent to 400 in 24 hours, he was in the options part of it. He got out perfectly. The next day, when Wall Street Bets shuts down, Robinhood puts a freeze on. The outrage, the frustration that was happening, I was in a front row seat for it all and living it with him. And so it was very emotional for me in that sense of, that's what I connected to with this story. That's like when Rebecca and Lauren's script came along, which was beautifully written, visually, and the energy that I felt for it was what I'd lived through with my son and the actual experience of it happening in real time. And that's what I wanted to capture in the film. I was living it vicariously through my son, who, he's 25 now, but back then, I guess it was about 24, 23, he had invested in it early on. And he was going through the blow by blow. So he would come, and at the time it was COVID and he was living with us. So he had a lot at stake. He was doing the options. He was very much one of our central characters in a way. And he'd come running down and be like, they just shut down Robinhood, they just shut down Wall Street Bets. And you'd see the outrage and the protests happening online, and just the stress levels of like when to sell, not to sell. I mean, every 3 minutes he was checking his phone. So I was, and then just sort of the system feeling rigged after all this happened. And you know, trying to figure out what exactly happened between Robin Hood and Citadel and all of these things that were happening in real time. I was living with him. And I wasn't thinking about doing a movie about it, honestly. I was working with Rebecca, and Angelo and Lauren Bloom, who we were working on a project together that fell apart, and they happened to be working on Dumb Money. And I'd constantly been talking about it with them because of what was going on with my son. It's an embarrassment of riches on this. It's like, it's kind of, I don't know if I'll ever get the opportunity to have so much fun with so many actors. First of all, you know, it all started with Roaring Kitty, and we're like, who is this guy going to be? And he's fascinating to watch online. Of course, we're always drawing from all the real footage. And he'd posted so much, and it's so intriguing. You're like, well, what is it that had 8 million people like rally around this individual? Like the internet can be really judgmental and critical and, you know, unapologetic. And somehow he endeared himself to like a whole community. And there was this like this earnestness and this accessibility and this intelligence without being preachy and this altruism. There's all these components to Keith that make him a very complex performance. And I couldn't think of anybody other than Paul Dano to play that role. He's like such a versatile actor. He's so nuanced in his performances. Ironically, the one movie that I was drawn to for this was Swiss Army Man, which you wouldn't expect, you know, with this wealth of work. But that was the thing that I saw those qualities and thought this could really work for this. And I was so lucky to get Paul. Seth, I had worked with on Pam and Tommy, and I called him, and he was in, which is amazing. And we have a great trusting relationship, and he knows tonally what I'm going for, and is very much in that wavelength. Sebastian Stan, again, who I've worked with many times, I called him and said, might not be the biggest role, we've got 12 roles here, but I would love you to be in it. And he's like, I'm in. Pete Davidson and Anthony were very close on a film together. We've always been trying to figure something out, and both of them signed on right away, which was awesome. And then Nick Offerman, the same thing, was sort of down to the wire on that, and I needed somebody that, again, can have that gravitas, but do the humor dance, and he signed on, which was wonderful. America Ferrera, I had not worked with. I did not know, but I loved her work in the past. She's such a mouthpiece in the film for the underdog, for the frustration that's happening. But also she's got to do it with like humor, you know, and stay within our film. And she does such a beautiful dance with that. And then another great surprise was Shailene Woodley, who I had not worked with, and she, I think, had signed on through a relationship with Aaron Ryder, our producer. And initially when she signed on, the role wasn't that big, but in her case, and it happened with all of our actors, every scene got elevated because I'm like, oh, I've got this person, you know, let's take advantage of that. And she's such an incredible actor. And we ended up writing 7 scenes, I think, between her and Paul that become the heart of this film. And she had so much emotional weight that it really, really is, you know, the heart of the film, and that was a real joy to see. I absolutely love Paul, and the range of Paul's work is astounding. It's like, you know, in fact, the movie I went back to was Swiss Army Man, to sort of see those traits of that innocence and that performance that he did in that film, because I felt like there's a lot of similarities to Roaring Kitty. And I was so excited when he wanted to play the role, because this film revolves around that character. The heart of the film is this character convincing the world to come along on this journey with him, and also that relationship that he has with Shailene Woodley, his wife, is truly the heart of the film. And they sort of encompass everything that the little guy is going through, and that's, like, you know, who we really, really want to root for. So being able to have an actor of his caliber that can give us all those facets and that humanity, and still be charming and lean into the humor where needed, was amazing. I love Seth Rogen. I'd say we got to work together on Pam and Tommy, which was amazing, and I would work with him every chance I get. When I got this script, I felt like, you know, from the layered performance that, you know, we'd worked together on Pam and Tommy, there were definitely facets, oddly, that I felt like I could really mine with him for this Gabe character, and I sent it over to him, and he loved it, and it was great. So he jumped right in. I was thrilled. And he brought like a humanity to it throughout, which was exactly what I was hoping for. I think it makes it an interesting journey for the audience when you have such a likable person off camera that is the one that you're supposed to be rooting against in the film. To play against type like that was really fun. A very unusual shoot in the sense that we have, I guess, about 12 different actors, almost all doing cameos. I mean, obviously Paul was the longest section, which I think was 8 or 9 days. But for the most part, it was between 3 and 5 days with each actor. So it was almost a little mini movie each time they came in. It's like you're starting over, you're figuring out your relationship and how to do the dance together, like on the set and work together and how they like to work. So, every week it would be a new experience, which was kind of wild. Actually, that moment of Shailene on the stairs at the end of the film, it's an 8-minute speech that Paul does, and she wasn't scripted to be in it. And she was there, and I said, you know what, Shailene, why don't you sit on the steps and just watch? And intuitively, between the two of them, Paul really started leaning on her, as he would, as a character, as he was doing the speech, and then it called for me to get coverage of her, and she didn't have a line, and her performance is riveting for 8 minutes. It's we ended up going to it so much because she had so much complexity going on in that silence. Actually, one of my favorite moments, and it was very busy because of our schedule, but it's the family scene where we have Paul Dano, we have Pete Davidson, Shailene Woodley, Clancy Brown. It's like we have all of our actors together, and anytime you can get everybody sparring together, and it was a scene that was written late, in the prep, and it was because I wanted a moment to see what would happen when he tells his family he's up 22 million and he's not selling, and his father's a truck driver, and his mother's a nurse, and interestingly, Rebecca and Lauren had written it one way, which was beautiful, but I was like, in my household, it would escalate. Like what I'm familiar with, it'd be like, what the hell? It's like the stress level. And I wanted to capture that and then have that. So we wrote something for that and then have the actors be able to jump in that and spar with it and keep it loose and step on each other and make it messy. Was really fun to do. I knew the writers, and the project we were working on fell apart. And I think literally the next day the script came over for Dumb Money, and I love their writing. And it was riveting. And it channeled into all the things that I found interesting. It was like an emotional ride. There was outrage involved. There was this marginalization of the haves versus the have-nots. This real frustration with the system feeling like it's rigged. And there was a lot of things tied into that timing with COVID, with what was happening out in politics and in the world. And it just became a perfect platform for that. At that time, with everybody, the internet was our only way of connecting. With COVID, everybody was trapped at home. And he would post these videos for 7 hours at a time, talking about his philosophy. And I think the thing that resonated with people was he was just very earnest and genuine, and there was no agenda. He was just trying to be helpful and wanted to encourage conversation and connect with people. And I unabashedly kind of geeky, he's got his Roaring Kitty outfit and his t-shirts, and he wasn't hiding behind any pretense. And I think there's a strong BS meter on the internet, and I think people smell it very quickly, and he didn't have it. And so he started to gather a lot of followers, and it just kept snowballing. This film is all about unity. It's why this moment happened. It's it went from 400,000 followers to 8 million followers on Wall Street Bets in a matter of 2 months. And it was about this community coming together and being heard, particularly about the frustration, the wealth disparity that's happening in the country. So to be able to experience that as a community in a theater and see that frustration and go on this journey, I think is kind of a gift, and I'm thrilled that we get to be in theaters with it. It's really a platform for the little guy. It's the David and Goliath story, and it's Dumb Money was a community, and to be able to share that in a theater as a community, I think is really going to be enjoyable for an audience. Dumb Money in the film is basically the retail investors that all the hedge fund guys call them dumb money because they think that they're spending money and never going to make anything. So that's their word for retail investors.
like a lot of people, we watched the story of GameStop play out while it was happening and then quickly became obsessed with it. I mean, Roaring Kitty is such an incredible character. He's so smart. He's so singular. He's so funny. And once we started digging into it as screenwriters, we really quickly realized that this is not just another story of the week. This is a story that tells us so much about why we are where we are as a culture, where we are going, where we could be going. It's also a profoundly human story. We just felt honored and excited to tell the story of the people who joined this movement, just regular people, not big hedge fund billionaires, although they're in the movie too, but regular people who came to this not necessarily as financial professionals, although lots of them really know their stuff, but because they wanted to be part of something bigger than themselves. It truly is a David and Goliath story. It's about the little guy rising up, saying, no, this isn't fair. I'm not going to take it anymore. And we're going to use the power of our numbers to accomplish something great.
Yeah, I think it was a classic underdog story. We completely fell in love with Keith Gill and his character. I think it's so rare to see a kind of reluctant hero on screen. And I think we were drawn to that aspect of him. You know, he's this ordinary guy who finds himself in completely extraordinary circumstances and more than rises to the challenge and inspires this army of people to follow him. It also is a story into one of like the most galling inequalities of our time, which is income inequality. And I think in a funny way, this story explained so much of the anger that was out there and that was exacerbated during the pandemic, where you really saw people who had so much, people who had so little.
And the outrage of a certain portion of financial professionals profiting off of the suffering that was happening all around us, stores being closed, people losing their jobs, and somehow that making money for people just felt like a step too far.
Yeah, when we started writing this screenplay, I mean, you know, it's funny. At first we were like, why is everyone talking about this video game store at the mall and why it's drawing all these headlines? And we realized that the story to us was really about value and this idea of who determines value in a society, you know, of a company like GameStop, but also the value of a human life. And I think with Keith Gill's point to many people was whether, you know, why let people who have the most money in a society determine value?
He's a maniac. He's a brilliant maniac. We love Craig. We've been trying to work with him forever. There is no director better at capturing energy on screen, and we knew when we were writing the screenplay that we wanted it to fly like a bat out of hell, and we knew there was no one else who could do it quite like Craig Gillespie. He's incredible with music, he's incredible with actors, he's incredible with energy and story.
We basically have been stalking Craig for years. This is the third film we tried to get him to direct of ours, and we were actually writing another project with him, like in his house with Post-it notes, when this project came up, and he was like, he had invested in GameStop himself and was kind of interested.
Unsuccessfully, unfortunately.
But yeah, we're just, you know, we love him. And I think a lot of directors, you know, they never want to see the writer again. Craig is incredibly collaborative and let us stand behind him on set every day and give notes. And we, you know, it was a great process.
Our goal in writing this movie was that you can come to a theater and totally get and enjoy and take in the full experience of the movie, never having bought a stock, not knowing or even wanting to know anything about the stock market. That said, what was really, like, what's frustrating about this and why a lot of people with great justification feel that the system is rigged is that information it's so technical, it's so complicated, and the true understanding of it is confined to so few people that it just feels like the system is rigged. In many senses, the system is rigged. It's impossible. And what happened in this movement, which is so powerful and so rare, frankly, is that people came together and they taught each other. So the movement built because Keith Gill had a vision, other people shared that vision, they swapped stories, they explained concepts to each other. It all built kind of snowballing on social media. And so I think that a powerful takeaway of this movie is the power of numbers, right? You can look and see it doesn't happen often. It may not happen again for a while, but a group of people who used to be invisible will never be invisible again because they joined together. They learned the basics of how this stuff works. They found a weakness and they went for it and they were successful.
Well, it's funny. It's never happened before on Wall Street.
It's incredible.
Right? That people banded together who didn't all understand that, you know, every aspect of the stock market, but just by saying, I believe in something, completely altered the terrain forever. We had a lot of speed bumps on the way, but we were daily journalists in a previous life. And so I think when this story happened and we realized how explosive it was and how important it was, we got to work and kind of applied that daily journalism rhythm to the writing of the screenplay and rewriting of the screenplay.
So we dove into the research, immersed ourselves in the world, read every comment on Wall Street Bets and other Reddit forums. We interviewed people. We quickly got ourselves up to speed and then tried to stay up to speed as events unfolded while we were writing drafts of the screenplay.
And rewriting. Yeah, I mean, things were happening. The SEC, finished their investigation when we had done 3 drafts already, so we did more drafts, and it was really like a very iterative process in that way. We're kind of tireless, I think, and just we'll never stop rewriting ourselves.
But it was fun to do something as it was playing out because we really felt we went along with the movement. So it's a roller coaster ride, and we were on that roller coaster. So I think that's reflected somewhat in the finished product on screen. It feels contemporary and fresh, and not like it's been sitting getting stale.
Lucky, Craig works as intensely and as fast as we do, and we just kind of worked it every day. The film is an argument for transparency and for fairness, and we feel very proud to be members of the Writers Guild who are having the same fight for transparency and fairness.
Yeah, we spent the last 2 years chronicling a movement of people saying enough is enough. The vast disparities in income, the concentration of wealth, power, and information among a small elite must end for things to improve and for everybody to have the dignity of their labor and a fair wage. We're really proud to be fighting for that with our union, and we're proud to show it on screen with this movie. Multiple people who've seen the film came away with lots of praise, but specifically observing that they have never seen men do childcare and housework and domestic duties as much as they see in this movie. So we get a lot of questions of people asking us as female writers, and we're proud to be female screenwriters, depicting strong female characters on screen or depicting strong, complicated male characters on screen. We're super happy to have the opportunity to get behind the eyes of every character that we show in this movie, but we're especially proud that somewhat inadvertently we have shown, because we have examples of them at home in our husbands, men who not only work but also help with the kids, do the dishes, assume domestic
While we were
duties.
writing this film, my husband was the room mom at my kid's school. But I think also we, as screenwriters, we've always wanted to write voices far from our own. One of the highest aims of screenwriting for us is the sense of radical empathy, is getting behind characters who have lived experiences very far from ours. And for decades, centuries, men have been writing women's voices, and we felt like it's time that women write men.